The Tarkesh combat hall was alive with the hum of gravity regulators. Steel ribs along the ceiling throbbed in rhythm with the Academy's pulse, each beat shifting the pressure of the air. Rows of alien cadets stood at rigid attention, scaled, furred, and feathered, eyes fixed forward as the commander's boots echoed across the deck. Mira Cade stood among them, the only human in a sea of non-human faces. Her uniform, plain gray and unadorned, seemed almost dull compared to the ornate armor of the Varaxians or the crystalline sashes of the Eladari. She adjusted nothing, even as the artificial gravity climbed to triple Earth standard. The floor trembled slightly. Around her, heavier species dug their talons in for balance. Lighter ones trembled. Mira simply breathed. "Level 3 sustained," the overhead voice announced. A Varaxian male beside her, a hulking reptilian creature with blue scales, snorted. "Your bones must be screaming, human." She didn't answer. Her gaze stayed forward, steady on the command platform where Commander Varkesh Roll stood, his armored tail coiled behind him like a whip. "Good morning, cadets," his gravelly voice cut through the room. "Another glorious day to remind you what separates warriors from the weak." His eyes, triple slit and bright as molten metal, swept the formation. When they met Mira's, they lingered, and perhaps to remind our visitors from the lesser worlds of their place. Soft laughter rippled through the ranks. Mira neither blinked nor shifted. The commander smirked. He paced before them. "Discipline is not taught. It is inflicted. Pain burns lessons into memory faster than praise ever could." His clawed hand clanged against his breastplate. "The Varaxian way forged the galaxy's most efficient soldiers. You are privileged to be here, to learn our doctrine." Every cadet responded with the Academy salute, a sharp tap of the chest and bow of the head. Mira's movement was the same, but slower, precise, measured. The commander's eyes narrowed slightly. "Commence drills," he ordered. The gravity shifted again. Mira felt her knees adjust instinctively, distributing weight through the balls of her feet. Years of Deathworld training on unstable terrain had honed every muscle to respond without conscious thought. Her heartbeat remained even. The Varaxians began their footwork routines, stomping in heavy patterns. The Eladari glided between positions with luminous precision. Mira mirrored the sequence perfectly, her motions fluid, no strain visible. The observing instructor muttered something into a data pad, glancing at her more than once. Halfway through the session, a cry came from the back row. A reptilian cadet collapsed, gasping under the gravitational pressure. Varkesh barked an order, and two assistants dragged the fallen student aside. His voice thundered, "The weak remove themselves. Only the durable remain." No one dared move. The silence pressed down as heavily as the gravity itself. Varkesh resumed pacing. "You will learn to break through limits. Your physiology means nothing. Mind and will define power." He stopped near Mira, his scaled head tilting. "Even for those whose biology is inadequate." Mira met his gaze without a word. Her brown eyes were calm, unreadable. The commander waited for a reaction. There was none. He turned sharply, tail snapping the air. "Pair drills! Cross species, now!" Mira was matched with a four-armed Niran, twice her size, covered in thick chitin. They began combat maneuvers, blocks, sweeps, controlled counters. The alien strikes were heavy but predictable. Mira adapted instantly, shifting her stance each time, absorbing impact with perfect balance. After several exchanges, the Niran paused, panting. "You don't even flinch," he said in disbelief. She allowed a faint smile. "You don't hit to connect. You hit to impress." His mandibles clicked. "That's not—" Varkesh's voice boomed from across the hall. "Cade! Niran! Center floor!" The crowd parted as they stepped forward. The commander circled them, assessing. His shadow fell across Mira. "You fight with restraint, human. That is not strength. It is hesitation." "With respect, Commander," she said quietly. "Restraint keeps strength under control." A ripple of murmurs spread through the hall. Varkesh's jaw flexed. "Is that wisdom or arrogance?" "Observation," she replied. The silence stretched taut. The commander turned away with a low hiss. "Dismissed!" he snapped. The cadets began filing out, whispers trailing behind them. Mira heard fragments. She talks back. Humans think they're clever. She's the Death World girl, isn't she? At the exit arch, she paused briefly, scanning the star field visible through the transparent hull. The red dwarf burned faintly in the distance, its light dim yet constant. Something about it felt familiar. Quiet endurance beneath impossible conditions. "Lieutenant Cade," a voice called. She turned. Varkesh stood on the platform again, claws resting on the railing. "You will remain after the next cycle," he said. "I wish to evaluate your durability." Her posture didn't change. "Understood, Commander." His eyes gleamed with amusement. "Don't disappoint me, human. Your kind is fragile, but I appreciate spirit. It makes the breaking more instructive." Mira inclined her head. "I'm sure it will be a valuable lesson." He didn't catch the double meaning, or chose not to. The hall emptied, leaving only the low hum of gravity turbines and the scent of ozone. Mira exhaled slowly, rolling her shoulders. The implants at the base of her spine pulsed faintly, a legacy of Earth's extreme conditioning protocols. They monitored strain, corrected balance, and suppressed adrenaline surges until consciously released. She rarely used them. Instinct was enough. As she exited the hall, a small group of human support staff stood near the data terminals. They glanced at her with subtle respect. One whispered, "He's going to try something tomorrow." "I know," Mira said. "You'll report it?" She shook her head. "No need." The staffer hesitated. "He's dangerous." "So am I," she replied softly. Her quarters were minimalist. Bed, data console, training sphere. No personal items, no decorations. She sat cross-legged on the floor, breathing evenly as the artificial light dimmed to sleep mode. Through the viewport, the Academy drifted above a crimson planet, storms flickering across its surface like veins of lightning. Mira's reflection hovered in the glass, faint but steady. She thought of Earth, its forests, oceans, and the relentless gravity that had shaped her people. The galaxy called humans soft because it didn't understand what survival meant on a world that tried to kill you every day. The chime of the intercom interrupted her thoughts. "Training evaluation scheduled for 0900. Combat Hall A, attendance mandatory." She closed her eyes for a moment. Of course. When she rose, her movements were smooth, deliberate. Every action had purpose, tying her hair, adjusting her boots, checking her neural stabilizers. She didn't prepare for the commander's test. She prepared for precision. In her mind, she reviewed every possible scenario Varkesh might attempt. Public humiliation, excess gravity, a strike meant to prove dominance. She accepted each one as data, not threat. When she finally lay down, the hum of the ship resonated through the walls like a heartbeat. Outside, the stars glimmered cold and distant, but she felt no isolation. She had already learned that silence could be more powerful than any roar. Tomorrow she would simply let the galaxy listen. The next morning, the Tarkesh combat hall was colder than usual. Even the walls seemed to hum with expectation. Rows of cadets filled the chamber, their armor glinting beneath the crimson lights. The air held a metallic tang, anticipation mixed with fear. Mira Cade entered last, unhurried. Her boots echoed softly across the reinforced floor as hundreds of alien eyes followed her. Word of the commander's special evaluation had spread overnight. She had become the day's spectacle before the event had even begun. Commander Varkesh stood at the center of the hall, flanked by instructors and recording drones. His armor gleamed obsidian black, every plate etched with battle scars. When he spoke, his voice carried through the chamber with calculated dominance. "Cadets of the Coalition," he began, "today we observe the limits of flesh and the arrogance of frail species who mistake tolerance for strength." He gestured toward Mira. "Our human guest will assist in this demonstration." No one laughed this time. The silence was thicker, more focused. Mira stepped forward and stopped 3 paces from him. Her expression was calm, posture perfect, hands at her sides. "Lieutenant Cade," he said, his mouth curling in amusement. "You volunteered for this, didn't you?" She met his eyes. "I was told to attend, Commander." He tilted his head, mock sympathy in his tone. Consider this an opportunity to learn humility. Her reply was even, almost gentle. I already understand humility, sir. What I'm curious about is control. A flicker passed through his eyes. Irritation, quickly buried. The crowd sensed it, a subtle shift in the room's tension. Varkesh raised his hand, signaling the gravity regulators. Level 5, he ordered. The hum deepened. The pressure slammed into everyone's bodies like an invisible weight. Several cadets staggered, claws scraping the floor for grip. Mira adjusted her stance slightly, her breathing measured. The implants along her spine pulsed faintly, distributing the load through her muscles. Varkesh smiled. Still standing. Impressive. For something made of water and calcium. No response. Her stillness seemed to irritate him more than defiance would have. Attack posture, he barked. She shifted into ready stance, weight centered, eyes steady. Her body language was neutral. No aggression, no fear. Varkesh circled her slowly. You humans rely on technology and luck. You lack the instinct of predators. You lack heritage. He stopped behind her, tail swaying lazily. Tell me, Lieutenant, what makes you think you belong here among evolved species? She turned her head slightly. We adapt, Commander. He struck. The motion was faster than a normal eye could follow, a whip-like backhand from his armored claw, meant to drop her instantly. The sound cracked through the hall like thunder, and then, nothing. Mira hadn't moved. Her head turned with the impact's momentum, her hair scattering across her face. The claw had connected. The force should have shattered bone. But she was still standing. A tremor of disbelief rippled through the cadets. The air felt frozen. Varkesh blinked, uncertain. Did you shield yourself? Her hand shot up, gripping his wrist before he could withdraw. The sound that followed was not loud, just a sharp, wet crack that sliced through the silence. His gauntlet fractured at the joint. He hissed in pain, trying to pull free. She didn't tighten her hold. She simply rotated her wrist slightly, leveraging his movement against him. Armor plates split and his knees buckled. Mira's voice was quiet, but clear. 10 seconds, Commander. That's how long you've held control. The hall was so silent, the hum of the gravity field became deafening. He snarled, lunging forward with his free hand, claws slashing for her throat. She stepped aside, redirecting his weight with surgical precision. His armored frame hit the floor with a metallic crash that reverberated across the chamber. Mira released him and stepped back, unhurried. Demonstration concluded, sir. The command staff froze. Instructors glanced at each other, unsure whether to intervene. Recording drones hovered. Lenses focused on the commander sprawled at her feet. Varkesh tried to rise, rage and disbelief twisting across his reptilian features. He managed a half growl before his injured arm gave out, sending him crashing again. Mira stood in silence, watching, her expression unreadable. One of the Elidari instructors whispered, "She didn't even draw energy." Another muttered, "That movement, pure physics, no augmentation." Varkesh staggered upright, clutching his ruined wrist. "You—" His voice broke between fury and humiliation. "You dare—" Mira saluted crisply. "Awaiting further instruction, Commander." Her tone was devoid of triumph, but it only deepened the humiliation. Around them, cadets stood petrified, unsure if they were witnessing bravery or sacrilege. "Get out!" Varkesh hissed. His breathing was ragged. "Get her out!" She turned on her heel and walked toward the exit, every step echoing like a drumbeat. The doors hissed open, spilling cold light from the corridor beyond. Before she left, she paused once, glancing back at the frozen hall. "Thank you for the demonstration," she said softly. It was instructive. Then she was gone. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then whispers began, spreading like a contagion. Did she break him? She didn't even look angry. She moved before he finished striking. How? Was that human reflex or instinct? Varkesh stood motionless, his breath harsh and uneven. His pride was wounded more deeply than his arm. Around him, the recording drones blinked red, transmitting every detail to the Academy archives. The senior instructor approached cautiously. "Commander, should we delete the footage?" Varkesh turned slowly, his triple eyes blazing. "No, let them watch." Let them all see what happens when mercy is mistaken for weakness. But even as he spoke, the weight of silence returned. Thick, suffocating, absolute. Every cadet could feel it. The balance had shifted. The myth of human fragility had just been rewritten in 10 seconds. Outside, Mira walked the corridor alone. Her pulse had already slowed to resting rhythm. She flexed her hand once. No tremor, no pain. The sensors embedded in her wrist reported perfect function. At the far end of the corridor, a reflection in the polished floor caught her attention. A pair of Elidari students standing frozen, still processing what they had witnessed. She gave a brief nod as she passed them. Neither returned it. They simply watched her go, silent, eyes wide. When she reached her quarters, she set her uniform gloves aside and washed the faint trace of dust from her hands. The water shimmered briefly under the artificial light. She stared at her reflection in the sink's metallic surface. Her voice was barely above a whisper. He struck to teach. So did I. She dried her hands, straightened, and faced the viewport. Beyond the glass, the academy orbited in stillness. The planet below glowing red like a slow-burning ember. Somewhere behind her, alarms began to sound. Official inquiries already in motion. Disciplinary boards assembling. Reports being filed. She closed her eyes, listening. 10 seconds of silence echoed in her memory. The collective breath of an entire species realizing what humanity truly was. Not fragile, not merciful, simply prepared. She exhaled once and whispered, "That's enough." The alarms faded into the hum of the station, and Mira Cade stood perfectly still, framed against the stars, calm, composed, and utterly human. The corridors of Tarkesh Academy felt different now, quieter, cautious. Mira Cade could sense it the moment she stepped out for morning inspection. Cadets who once smirked when she passed now looked away or stiffened to attention. Some whispered, but their tones carried something new, deference, not mockery. The incident had spread beyond the academy. Instructors had replayed the footage dozens of times, analyzing every frame of the 10-second confrontation. Commanders from other stations requested copies for study. The Varaxian Council had already sent investigators. But to Mira, it was just another day on rotation. She reached the central atrium where Commander Varkesh once conducted his drills. The space was deserted except for maintenance drones cleaning scorch marks from the previous session. The floor still bore faint indentations from where his armor had struck. A human technician approached carefully. "Lieutenant, the hearing's scheduled for 1300. They want your statement on the record." "Understood," Mira said. He hesitated. "They say the commander's still in recovery. Crushed ulna, fractured armor, neural strain." "You really did my job," she interrupted gently. "Nothing more." He nodded quickly and left. She watched him go, then turned toward the viewport where the red dwarf burned dim against black space. Her reflection stared back, expressionless, composed. There was no satisfaction, only inevitability. The hearing chamber was designed for intimidation. High ceilings, obsidian walls, and 3 counselors elevated above the floor. Holographic projectors surrounded the central dais, displaying multiple camera angles of the incident. Mira stood alone in the center, uniform immaculate. Hands clasped behind her back, a Varaxian counselor, scaled, tall, with ceremonial armor polished to mirror brightness, spoke first. "Lieutenant Mira Cade of Earth, you are charged with assaulting a superior officer during a sanctioned demonstration. Do you dispute the charge?" "No, counselor," she said. "But I dispute the implication." Murmurs spread among the attendants. Another counselor, smaller and pale-skinned Elidari, leaned forward. "Explain." Mira's tone stayed calm. "Commander Varkesh initiated a physical strike without warning. His intention was to cause injury as a form of instruction. I responded proportionally to prevent escalation. My restraint ensured his survival," the Varaxian counselor hissed softly. "You call fracturing a commander's arm restraint?" "Yes," Mira replied. "If I hadn't restrained it, he wouldn't have an arm." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the translator drone seemed to pause mid-hum. A third counselor, representing the coalition's neutral faction, reviewed her service file. Your record shows multiple commendations for composure under pressure. Tactical performance in simulated gravity exceeds standard thresholds by 87%. She inclined her head slightly. Earth environments tend to prepare us for extremes. The neutral counselor exchanged glances with the others. You will receive an official warning for breaching decorum during instruction. However, due to mitigating factors and evidence of provocation, no further action will be taken. Understood. The Varaxian counselor leaned closer. One question, human. Why didn't you strike back harder? I saw hesitation in your movement. Mira met his gaze. I wasn't defending myself. I was defending control. For a long moment, no one spoke. The counselor reclined slowly, eyes narrowing. Dismissed. She saluted, turned, and walked from the chamber. As the heavy doors sealed behind her, faint voices followed, arguments between counselors about containment and reassessment of human inclusion. Outside, cadets had gathered in the corridor, waiting for a glimpse of her. When she appeared, conversations died mid-sentence. A few saluted instinctively. Others stared as if seeing something entirely new. She moved through them without expression, gaze fixed forward. At the far end, a familiar figure waited, Lieutenant Korin, a Zalathi instructor known for brutal honesty. His scaled brow furrowed as she approached. You just broke the most feared commander in the sector, and they gave you a warning? I didn't break him, she said. I corrected him. He chuckled, low and sharp. Correction noted. You realize what you've done, don't you? Half the recruits worship you. The other half fear you. I prefer silence, Mira said. Korin studied her for a moment. Silence is rare in this place. You've earned it. He stepped aside. They're recalibrating the training program already. No one wants to be the next example. She nodded once and continued on. That evening, the Academy's mess hall was unusually quiet. Normally filled with noise, it now hummed with subdued energy. Conversation stopped when Mira entered. She carried her tray to a corner table, ate without hurry, eyes lowered to her food. Across the room, a group of Varaxian cadets exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, one of them stood, a broad-shouldered soldier with golden scales. He approached her table. Every eye followed. Lieutenant, he said formally, his deep voice respectful. Permission to speak? She set down her utensils. Granted, he bowed slightly, a gesture rare among Varaxians. Commander Varkesh was a legend to our kind. He taught us that dominance is survival. You've shown something different, something I can't define. Discipline, Mira said softly. He nodded once. Discipline, yes. He stepped back and gave her a crisp salute. Several others mirrored him. For the first time since her arrival, Mira returned the gesture. When she left the hall, the corridor lights flickered into standby mode, reflecting her faint silhouette across the polished floor. The whispers followed again, but this time they carried awe. Later that night, she returned to the combat hall. The space was empty, illuminated only by dim floor lights. The walls still echoed faint traces of yesterday's chaos. She walked to the center, placing her hand on the cracked tiles where Varkesh had fallen. The floor was cool beneath her palm. Behind her, the door hissed open. Varkesh entered, one arm locked in an exosplint, his movements slower but still imposing. You shouldn't be here, he said. Neither should you, she replied quietly. He stopped a few paces away. The hum of machinery filled the silence. You humiliated me in front of my academy. You humiliated yourself when you struck first, Mira said. Her tone wasn't cruel, it was matter of fact. You wanted a lesson. I delivered one. His eyes narrowed. You think this victory changes what you are? It changed what you believe I am, she corrected. He stared at her for a long time, expression unreadable. Finally, his voice dropped. When I hit you, I wanted fear. What I saw was calm. Why? Because fear's a choice, she said. And humans stopped choosing it a long time ago. The commander's tail twitched once. Then, to her surprise, he bowed his head slightly, a fraction, but unmistakable. Perhaps we misjudged your species. Not we, Commander, she said softly. You. He gave a slow, rumbling laugh, low, bitter, almost admiring. The council will reassign me. I may never command again." "Then learn something while you still can," she said. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "Tell me, Lieutenant, what do humans call what you did yesterday?" She looked past him toward the stars beyond the viewport. "Adaptation." When he left, the hall fell silent again. Mira stood alone beneath the dim light. The gravity generators hummed softly, cycling through calibration. She closed her eyes and breathed, the air heavy but familiar. Tomorrow, drills would resume. The galaxy would continue spinning, pretending nothing had changed. But every cadet who had witnessed that moment would remember. Every whisper, every glance, every pause when a human entered the room. Those were the ripples of a lesson too deep to fade. She walked to the edge of the platform and looked down through the transparent floor at the planet below. Red storms coiled endlessly, fierce and beautiful. "Underestimation," she murmured, "is our favorite weapon." The words hung in the air like a promise. The hum of the station deepened, blending into silence, the kind born not of fear but of respect. Weeks passed, but the echo of that silent moment, the 10 seconds that rewrote the Academy's balance, refused to fade. Mira Cade noticed it in the smallest things, the subtle pause when she entered a room, the way conversations shifted whenever her boots touched the deck. Respect had replaced ridicule, but respect often carried something heavier, fear. She didn't crave either. She wanted purpose. The Tarkesh Academy, once a furnace of arrogance, now simmered with uneasy curiosity. Mixed-species drills ran quieter. Commanders no longer shouted. They observed. The human cadet, who had shattered hierarchy without raising her voice, had forced the galaxy's finest to question everything they believed about strength. Mira spent her mornings in the combat hall, alone now. No audience, no witnesses, no approval. The crack in the floor where Varkesh's armor had split remained untouched. She trained in silence, movements precise, each strike measured, each breath deliberate. The hum of the gravity generators was her metronome. The door opened softly behind her. Lieutenant Corin entered, his reptilian scales catching the faint light. "Still training?" She didn't stop. Still breathing. He folded his arms, watching her sequence of strikes. Fluid, effortless, human. You know, most cadets would be celebrating after something like that. "Most cadets," she said, lowering her hands, "haven't seen what happens when victory becomes arrogance." Corin's eyes glinted. "That sounded like experience. Observation," she corrected. "Arrogance always eats its own," he smirked. "You've become a legend, Cade. The Council's messages reach every command base. Even the outpost at Drell 5 quoted your words. Fear's a choice." She exhaled softly, as if the attention itself were another form of weight. "Legends are convenient. They let people forget the truth." "What truth?" "That I reacted, not rebelled. They call it defiance because they don't understand restraint." Corin nodded slowly. "Still, you've changed something here. Even Varkesh's students follow your methods now." "I didn't want disciples," she said quietly. "I wanted understanding. That evening, Mira was summoned to the communications chamber, an unusual order marked Council Priority. The circular room was dim, illuminated only by holographic projections of the 3 senior counselors she had faced weeks earlier. Their forms flickered in the cold light. "Lieutenant Cade," the neutral counselor began, "we've received reports from multiple sectors regarding your conduct and the subsequent behavioral shift across the Academy network." Mira stood at attention. "Acknowledged, Counselor," the Elidari counselor interjected. "Your demonstration has inspired unrest. Several non-human cadets question existing command hierarchies. You've become a symbol, intentionally or not." "I didn't intend anything," she replied evenly. "Intent is irrelevant," the Varaxian counselor hissed. "Effect is what matters. The Academy's purpose is order. You've created hesitation." Mira's gaze remained steady. "Perhaps hesitation is healthy when certainty leads to cruelty." The neutral counselor exchanged glances with the others. "You speak as if teaching them a new doctrine." "I teach nothing," she said. But the galaxy watched a human stand her ground and stay silent after. "They're realizing silence isn't submission. It's control. The Varaxian counselor's voice hardened. Control breeds rebellion. Are you proud of what you've ignited? No, Mira said softly. But I'm not ashamed either. The counselors went silent for a long moment. Then the neutral one spoke again. The Coalition intends to relocate you, Lieutenant. You will be assigned to Outpost Sura 9, a frontier station under observation. Consider it reassignment. Or exile. Understood, she said without hesitation. You accept without protest? The Elidari asked, curious. Mira nodded. If their fear needs distance to become understanding, I'll provide it. The holograms flickered and vanished, leaving the chamber dark. By dawn, her orders were sealed. A shuttle awaited on Launch Deck 6. The metallic scent of ozone filled the bay as engineers prepared the craft for departure. Mira carried only one small case, no decorations, no commendations, just her datapad and a single Earth insignia patch. Lieutenant Corrin met her near the boarding ramp. They're sending you out there alone. You realize that's not a reassignment, it's isolation. I've lived through worse, she said. He hesitated, then extended a data chip. This contains the training logs you designed. If something happens to you, I'll keep teaching them, quietly. She accepted it, sliding it into her wrist terminal. That's unnecessary. It's not, he said firmly. You changed the academy. That doesn't vanish because they moved you. Mira regarded him for a moment, then gave a faint nod. Keep them disciplined, Corrin. They'll need it. He smiled. You sound like a commander. Titles don't matter, she said as she stepped toward the ramp. Behavior does. The shuttle door sealed behind her with a hiss. Engines rumbled to life, and the view outside shifted, the academy shrinking to a metallic dot against the red planet's glow. For the first time, she felt the strange emptiness of space, not as isolation, but as clarity. Hours into flight, she activated the ship's log. The cabin lights dimmed as her reflection appeared on the console's screen. Mira Cade, Earth Recon, departing Tarkesh Academy under Council Directive. Mission undefined. She paused, considering her words. If anyone listens to this later, understand that control isn't power. It's choice. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way. Her voice steadied. Out there, I'll keep representing it, quietly. She ended the log and leaned back, eyes tracing the swirl of stars outside. The hum of the engines blended with her heartbeat, a steady rhythm of persistence. After a while, the console blinked with an incoming message, encrypted, unsigned. She opened it. A single line appeared. You didn't silence them, Lieutenant. You woke them. No sender, no trace. Just the message, glowing faintly before it vanished. She stared at the empty screen for a moment, then smiled faintly. 3 days later, Outpost Sura 9 appeared ahead, a lonely speck orbiting a dying gas giant. Sparse lights flickered across its hull like fading stars. The station's voice crackled over comms. Unscheduled arrival, identify, Lieutenant Mira Cade, Coalition Directive. A pause. Then, acknowledged. Docking Bay 3 unlocked. When the airlock cycled open, a cold wind rushed through the corridor. The outpost smelled of metal and old circuitry. A single officer awaited her, an elderly Carthan with translucent skin and tired eyes. Welcome to Sura 9, he said. Population 23, morale uncertain. Understood, Mira replied. Let's start with routine. He studied her for a moment. You really are her, aren't you? The one from Tarkesh? I'm just a soldier, she said. Soldiers don't make galaxies go quiet, he muttered. She ignored the comment, walking past him into the observation dome. Beyond the glass stretched an endless void, the gas giant storms twisting below in silent fury. For a long moment, she simply stood there, feeling the faint tremor of the station under her feet. Then she spoke, not to anyone, but to the stars themselves. Control, she whispered, isn't silence. It's direction. The void offered no reply, only a deep, endless calm. But somewhere beyond that stillness, Mira knew her story had already begun to move through the network, reshaping how entire civilizations saw the fragile species from the blue world. As the first watch cycle began, she activated the gravity chamber, alone again. The hum rose around her, steady, patient. Her movements flowed with quiet precision, the same discipline that had once silenced an entire academy. Outside, space remained vast and indifferent. But inside, one human heartbeat kept perfect rhythm with the stars. Mira smiled faintly. 10 seconds, she murmured, was enough. The lights dimmed, and the station returned to silence. No longer the silence of fear, but of understanding.